Welcome back to Bedhaven, the safe place for safe plays. Back after the Genesis Invitational, where we had Ludwig Aubert take down the rest of the field. Obviously, doing this show solo today. We're going to get into the Mexico Open here shortly. But Chandler will hopefully be joining me back again next week for the Cognizant Classic. That is a hopeful state at this point. He will be back eventually, but if it's not next week, I'm hoping for the week after. Looking back at the Genesis, him and I obviously discussed Ludwig once he brought him up. He did have a significant amount of him on DFS, DraftKings, and he had an outright ticket at 27-1, I believe was his final number, boosted 30% on Bet365. Nice little payday there for him. Took down a single entry contest on DFS, fifth place finish for a couple hundred. Not entirely sure what the total amount there was, but yeah, all in all, good week. I touted Patrick Cantlay. He was my most units placed were on Cantlay. Got into the mix and just kind of looked a little off to me personally. I've never really considered Patrick Cantlay to be like one of those like stone cold killers when they get into contention, but I think on hole 13, either 13 or 14, where he went rough to rough on the par 5, I believe that's hole 13, just pretty much took him out of it at that point. I mean, he was right there in the mix. Ludwig obviously fell back to almost like 60-1 at one point during the final round. Just made 2 bogeys in a row and then another 5 on a par 5 that he had a decent look for birdie on. The guy's a machine though. Started really, finding that second gear on the back 9 stretch. But I think overall the things that we discussed, the people that we touted during the last show, we're right there in the mix almost every single week at this point, it feels like. So it'll be interesting to see how this week goes. I have no idea who Chandler is interested in. I can tell you he's probably going to go right back to Akshay. Again, we'll get into all that here shortly. But yeah, just make sure you guys are liking the stuff that you're seeing. Whenever you see us post, tweets, Instagrams, whatever. If you're not following, make sure you follow at the Bedhaven. Been trying to really at least crank out one TikTok per full length video that we do at this point. So just make sure you're following there. Follow on Twitter. I post the full cards on Twitter. I'm going to do that here shortly after I record this video. Let's go ahead and get into the Mexico Open this week. They are playing Vidanta World, formerly Vidanta Vallarta, former champ Jake Knapp back in the field this week. Sort of a unknown name at this point last year. I know that a lot of people were on him. I don't really know how. I think his number was 45-1 last year. Played well at the Farmers coming into this. I believe that was one of the main things. Jake Knapp, Bomber's Paradise. You're going to hear that 1,000 times this week, depending on where you're listening. But a couple notes about the course. It is a par 71. You get 5 par 3s, 4 par 5s, 7,436 yards, paspalum grass everywhere, Greg Norman design. Obviously a couple courses out there that fit that mold, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm not really the stats guy as far as when we do these videos, I always kick it to Chandler for the stats. So for me personally, I've narrowed it down to 2 really simple concepts, and I'm going to kind of feed you guys golfers based on this information. I'm going weighted strokes gained, which is it's a strokes gained measured to the field, relative to the field, and then strokes gained long courses. 50-50 split. I could get really cute. I could go approach 200 plus. I could go driving distance, obviously, like I said, Bomber's Paradise. But this is just going to be, for me, a really simplified version of who is gaining the most strokes relative to these fields on long courses. Obviously, I do, the lean is going to be bombers or guys that hit it long. But ultimately, I want to see who's gaining strokes relative to the field on these long courses. So what I've done here is I've created a custom model for the Mexico Open, and I'm going to give it kind of a breakdown of recency and then 100-round baseline for some of these guys. So at the top of this model, when I break it down into those 2 categories, strokes gained relative to the field and strokes gained long courses, Will Chandler is my number 1. I'm going to assume that a lot of that is coming from Waste Management. I want to say he just finished well at Waste Management. Let me double check that real quick. He was kind of a no name for me. Not no name. I don't mean to disrespect anybody that's out there playing professional golf, but I just didn't know who he was. Yeah, T6 at Waste Management. I did a lot of it putting, gained 2.28 on the greens during that tournament. Lost off the tee, gained a half shot on approach and a little bit around the greens. I'm a little bit concerned with some. So this course is going to play a lot different than what we've seen, and we've got relative recent stats on a lot of these tournaments. At this point this year, we've seen Sony. We've had a couple signature events, so a lot of the guys in this tournament aren't going to be getting stats from the signature. But for the non-signatures, we've had Sony, we've had Farmers, we've had Phoenix, American Express. And the thing about the American Express and the Phoenix Open that I will say, I think you're going to see a lot of guys that either lost strokes or gained strokes putting or lost strokes putting, depending on who you're looking at. But these courses played a little bit differently than they have in years past. For example, American Express, the only measured rounds that we were getting as far as the strokes gained numbers was at the Pete Dye Stadium course. Pete Dye Stadium course completely remodeled their greens. Played a little bit firmer, was harder to hold the greens. And then if you're not watching these tournaments, it's harder to kind of get this information because not everybody's putting it out there. But Phoenix also, I think, played very firm in the beginning and honestly played a little bit tougher in rounds one and not so much round two. It just kind of depends. But the morning time, when the early feed was starting, I was noticing that guys were just having difficulty holding the greens. I don't feel like that's going to be the case here. So I would say that anybody that did really well on approach or putting, it's not just something that's just going to carry over automatically. It's going to be a very different type of course, very different type of conditions that these guys face. The really only defense for this course is a little bit of wind that typically comes in the afternoon. And obviously there's water in play on several holes. But just looking at this model, let's go back to the model here. Will Chandler's number one in the model. Akshay Bhatia is number two. We say that name a lot on this show. Akshay he's local to where we are here in the Raleigh Wake Forest area. He is the most expensive golfer in the field. He's also the lowest odds or the favorite in the field. I think he opened at 22. He's kind of down near the 13-14 number. Crazy short, but obviously the class of the field. Let's see. We got Jackson Suber in there. Jackson Suber is a Korn Ferry stud, I believe. He's actually a guy that I was looking at recently because I think he hits it pretty far, and he played well at the Sony, I want to say. I'm not going to go through everybody, but just kind of the names that pop at the top here. Driving distance for Jackson Suber. Decent on approach. Pretty solid on approach, honestly. Finished T6 at Sony. Missed the cut at American Express. Again, I'm not going to fault anybody for tough play at American Express or Waste Management. And even the Farmers. The Farmers played completely different than we just saw at Genesis. It was firm. It was fast. Guys really struggled. And I know the scores weren't, too much different, but first 2 days at Genesis, we saw wind, we saw rain, and then really Saturday, Sunday is when the scoring took place in the soft conditions. So, relative to the first two rounds of Farmers, Genesis was pretty similar, but relative to the second two rounds, I'd say it played a lot easier. Let's see, go back to the model here. Ricky Castillo is another name up here that I'm seeing. Sam Stevens. Sam Stevens is going to be a chalky play for a lot of people. Obviously in really good form. I think he kind of faltered on Sunday during the Genesis, but was really right back in the mix at Torrey Pines again. Jacob Bridgman. I'm going to pause on this one here. I'm on Jacob Bridgman for a first round leader bet. I believe he tees off in the morning time. Again, you got afternoon winds that typically show up here. So for me personally, I am going to be more heavy on the morning guys for the first round leader bets. I'm not going to have a ton of exposure to this tournament, in all honesty here, but Jacob Bridgman is going to be a look for me. I didn't realize this is obvious. This is last 8 rounds. So this looks a little bit different than some of the names that I'm used to seeing, because I don't typically run an 8 round baseline. I run more in like the 24 to 36 when I'm looking at some of this stuff, but I'm trying to kind of really narrow down some of these plays here. So give a look to, so far on this list that I'm seeing, I would say Akshay is going to be one of my, I just have to. I have to plug and play him. I will play him on DFS, and I don't know about betting him at the 14. If you got the 22, you should feel really good about that number. Other than that, if you feel like throwing a couple bucks at anything, if you could get it boosted to like 18 to 1, that would be my suggestion. So him and Jacob Bridgman. I don't know what I'm going to do with Sam Stevens yet. I kind of expect a letdown a little bit. Maybe the Sunday round was signs of a little bit of fatigue here, but you never know. Alex Smalley is here at the 11th ranked golfer on this model. A lot of love for Alex Smalley. Opened at really short odds considering his prowess as far as win equity is concerned. In my opinion, I think he's down to 35 to 1 on Bet365. Opened at 45. He's not going to get a ton of love for me. You know, I'm going to like a lot of these guys. I'm not going to bet a lot of them. So that'll be the main difference here. Obviously, Lanto was in the mix at Farmers. He's next on this list. Andrew Putnam. Andrew Putnam is a perfect example of one of these guys that has zero distance off the tee, but just finds a way to plot around these longer courses. He's 12th on this model. 12th. Andrew Putnam is probably near the bottom of the list as far as driving distance goes on the PGA Tour. So that's just a perfect example of, you know, everybody's going to sit here and tell you, oh, Bombers Paradise, Bombers can only win, blah, blah, blah. One of these short guys could get really hot and they could make it work. And Andrew Putnam is probably a really good example of that. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm just saying that's, you know, where your head needs to be doesn't need to be strictly think of people that have distance off the tee. There's plenty of people that are going to play this tournament have distance off the tee and they're going to suck. So, all right, down here, I see Taylor Moore. I've seen some love for Taylor Moore. I'm not going to get there. God, he's 14th on this model. There's how many golfers in this tournament? There's 132 on this list here. I didn't expect Taylor Moore to model quite this well in the recent rounds, but I don't know. I'm sure he's going to have some exposure. I do have projected ownership here. He's 9,000 on DraftKings. Projected ownership is 17%. Ownership was very wrong last week. I will say that. I think Adam Scott was projected to be 7% owned before lock. He was 23% by the time it was all said and done. Akshay projecting around 29%. Oh, that's a lot. So yeah, like I said, class of the field. So Akshay's going to get a lot of that love. Hopefully some of that ownership does come down. But right here, 21st in this model for me, again, last 8 rounds for all of these guys is Beau Hossler. I have already bet Beau Hossler outright. I bet him with a no sweat on BetMGM, 33 to 1. I think you can get him higher than that on Bet365 right now at 37 to 1. Again, 21st in the model. He's not the longest guy on tour, but he is above average in distance. I'm going with my gut this week. These are the volatile events where really anybody is in play. Kind of unlike last week where, you know, and Chandler even mentioned it. We talked about how one of the top guys was probably going to take that thing down, and Ludwig, from the odds board standpoint, was one of the top guys in the field last week. This week, you know, it could really go to anybody. So yeah, Beau Hossler is somebody that I'm a big fan of. I will have him as a first round leader bet. He is playing in the afternoon in the first round, but an excellent win player, so I'm not too worried about that. Kevin Yu, 23 in the model for the last 8 rounds. I am expecting, and I've heard a lot of people mention his name, I'm seeing projected ownership at 16.83%. You can write this down. Kevin Yu will have a letdown week. That could come back to bite me if he wins this tournament. He is a winner on tour, won the Sanderson Farms back in the fall swing. I'm just expecting a letdown putting performance. But foreshadow here, Kevin Yu at the Players. I don't know if he's going to be in the field or not, but if he is, I will be on Kevin Yu for some sort of placement bet. CT Pan's here. I got love for CT Pan, but I'm seeing too much love. And that's enough for me to get off there. Charlie Hoffman, 29th in the model. Wow, low ownership. Charlie Hoffman was a lot of people's play at the Waste Management, I believe. He ranks out well. He ranks out well for distance. He ranks out well for weighted strokes gained to the field in this model. I have a bet on Charlie Hoffman, 80 to 1. Um, I think I think he recently posted that letter to the PGA Tour about being players need to get more involved and pace of play stuff. I think if you're gonna be yapping like that, you need to come out and perform. I think he was kind of a letdown in the tournament that he was expected. I know a lot of people were on him. Was that had to have been Waste Management? He's got a good history there. Yeah, missed the cut at Waste Management, but T5 at American Express. Bad putting, horrible putting at American Express. Honestly, not a great putter to begin with, but T25 at Farmers. T to green, been pretty solid. Just if he can putt at all this week, and putting is sort of negated here, I think he actually stands a chance. Again, 80 to 1. You don't have to throw that much money on it to get a decent return. Right below him at number 30 is another guy I have bet outright, Ben Griffin. Again, not a big bomber off the tee, but ranking in this model. And this model is, you can pull all sorts of different information, as much information as you want to, into this model, and it's going to tell you as far as these other guys go. I mean, the approach stats, the approach buckets, those are super they just make it a little bit harder to kind of see the entire picture, because it's going to pull, if somebody's good from 175 to 200 yards, but they're not good from 200 to 225, and they hit it long, it's not going to give you, if you narrow it down to that 175 to 200, you're either going to get information that they're good from a certain distance. It's just, I think it gets a little muddy in here, and that was kind of my whole point of making this just a two stat profile here, to give myself a decent baseline to bet off from what I'm already thinking. Ben Griffin, like I said, I have bet him. So my most units currently are on Beau Hossler and Ben Griffin outright. That sounds horrible to say. I just neither one of those guys are elite golfers, but I think for this field, they can be considered top end, especially Ben Griffin. We saw him kind of pop last year at times. Second place finish at the RBC Canadian, played in the FedEx, and had a really good first round at TPC Southwind. So let's see who else. Michael Kim, 35th in this model. He's going to be extremely popular this week, although he's only showing 10% ownership. I expect more than that. He's been playing really well. He's a very active guy on social media. A lot of people, pay attention to what he's saying on Twitter and stuff. So I expect more than 10% there. If it's less than that, I'd actually be kind of interested in it. But he's rounded into form here. I don't know how long he can carry it. But yeah, hopefully he gets a win soon. I do like Michael Kim. Under here, Steven Yeager. His actually recent rounds are better than I was expecting. He's been kind of struggling, for the start of the year. 13.5% ownership, 9,600 on DK. I'll probably have one of Steven Yeager. I didn't immediately go to him when I was looking at the odds boards. I know he has a T3 finish here. I know he finished first at Houston, where there's wind and it's driver heavy course. He just didn't jump out at me. Jake Knapp is 39th in the model, former winner here. I'm not going to have any of him, which is a little bit scary, but whatever. Joe Highsmith, 43 in the model. I have already bet Joe Highsmith first round leader, 66 to 1, same odds as Jacob Bridgman. So what does that put me at? That puts me at Jacob Bridgman, Joe Highsmith, and Hossler as my first round leaders. I think Luke List is also here somewhere. I think I saw his name. Yeah, Luke List, 26th on the model. I kind of glanced over him, but I bet him as well. First round leader. I want to say he's 90 to 1. Luke List, let's just pull this up really quick because it's kind of interesting. Luke List is a historically bad putter, but has gained putting in 3 straight. I'm usually team no putt here. His tee to green doesn't look great, but a guy that just honestly pisses on the ball off the tee and all of a sudden is maybe got something figured out with the putter. I don't know. I think it's worth a shot at 90 to 1. Has decent maybe par three birdie or better percentage. Those are some of the other stats you can start looking at when you really want to fine tune what you're seeing. But as far as like creating your actual baseline here, I think this is where you want to start. And I believe as we get further down this list, I've seen some love for Victor Perez. I like Victor Perez. He's let me down, a handful of times in the betting market, so it's really hard for me to go back to him. But there's a chance that I'll have something. Michael Thorbjornsen, 58th in the model, probably doesn't have a ton of rounds. 3 tournaments, 8 rounds, so he does have full exposure there. That's a talent play. If you believe in Michael Thorbjornsen as the talent, there's a difference between class and talent. Previous winners of this event, Tony Finau, John Rahm, those guys just honestly went to a tournament like this, a course like this, and just outclassed it. You can come down here as a talent and I'm sure find a way to make it work. And that's what Knapp did last year. So if you believe that this is going to be another like kind of low, somewhat under the radar talent, then I think you need to put something on Michael Thorbjornsen, especially since I've said his name a couple times and it hasn't worked out. Eventually, water's going to have to find its level here. Let's see. I'm going to go down a little bit further. Wow, Nicolai Højgaard, 68th in this model. Projected ownership 11%. I don't have any Højgaard. Both him and his brother Rasmus are playing in this event. Just not for me personally. That probably means one of them's going to win, but I think Rasmus is like 20-1 and Nicolai is 50, 55, something like that. So all right, let's back this down. And I'm going to put this name out there. Taylor Montgomery, 92 in this model. Again, this is a field of 132. Let's go 24 rounds and see if any names kind of significantly change. Okay, Akshay still number 2. That's interesting. Sam Stevens goes to number 1. Jacob Bridgman goes to number 4. I only have a first round leader bet on Bridgman right now. Maybe I need to do an outright. I do think Bridgman is interesting. I don't think he's a bomber. I think he hits it further than the average. Yeah, he's above average in driving distance. Great putter, great around the green. Both of those stats are going to be negated here, but he's good enough on approach. Hits it far enough. I think he popped at Wyndham in round 1 during the fall. Let's see. Yeah, T12. Honestly, pretty solid end of the year for him last year. T19 3M, T12 at Wyndham, T11 at Sanderson, T14 at Technology, Butterfield, Bermuda, T12. Yeah, really solid end of the year. I don't know what he's done this year. 3 missed cuts in a T21 at American Express where he putt really well. Yeah, maybe just the first round leader. I don't know. Okay, Beau Hossler goes to number 6, and when you back it up to 24 rounds versus the last 8 rounds, Thorbjornsen is 7. Patrick Rogers 8, Smalley 9, Ben Griffin 11. So we're seeing the guys that maybe haven't been playing as great in the last 8 rounds. When you back it up to the last 24 rounds, we're seeing a lot of improvement there, particularly on Ben Griffin, Hossler, Bridgman. Who else? CT Pan gets back up there. I'm looking for, Joe Highsmith, 22 here. I'm looking for Taylor Montgomery because I've already bet Taylor Montgomery. Taylor Montgomery is a pure dart throw for me. I think he was 93rd in 8 rounds. He's 85th, so a little bit of improvement in 24 rounds. I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about Taylor Montgomery, and especially when I do this. So I'm going to back it up to 100 rounds. This is my 100-round baseline. I think he jumps up significantly. Yeah, he goes to 57. Um, he's 6,500 on DraftKings. He's 350 to 1. We saw him earlier this year, I believe. I want to say he gained strokes on approach, which is not something he does almost ever. He's a putter around the green guy. And at the Farmers, no. It would have had to have been, yeah. At Sony, he gained 0.16. That's nothing to write home. Oh wait, no, that's off the tee. Yeah, he gained 0.75 strokes on approach at the Sony Open. And then he missed the cut at Farmers, but in the one measured round, he gained 0.75. So maybe he's figured out something with these irons. You know, Farmers Insurance from a length standpoint, a lot of these rounds that these guys are getting from this custom model are at Farmers. So maybe I just think it's worth a dart. If you go down the board, he's probably the highest odds in this particular area of the custom model. Like, I mean, you got Tim Whiting in here, but Taylor Montgomery has shown me something in the past, and I just have a weird feeling about him. I don't really know what else to say about it. Probably shouldn't spend any more time talking about him, but yeah, as far as that goes, that is where I'm at. Nothing really crazy jumps back out at me here when I go to a 100 round baseline. Chan Kim's up here. Aaron Rai. Okay, that's another interesting one because Aaron Rai hasn't been playing very well. But when you back it up to a 100 round baseline, he's fifth in the model of strokes gain, weighted strokes gain to the field, and strokes gain on long courses. So, listen, this is not an event that has a lot of elite level golfers in it. So I would just tell you that find your pivot points for DFS. Some of those guys for me, I guess I'll do that real quick. I was expecting more ownership on Thor Bjornsson. Right now, projected ownership 7.98. I don't hate that. Charlie Hoffman 4.56. That's gonna be a play for me. Bridgman 7.76. That's gonna be a play for me. I'm not gonna have that much Steven Yeager. So if you're looking for a pivot off of Steven Yeager, he's 9,600. You could go. I mean, a lot of these top end guys are just more owned than they're gonna be more owned than they should be solely because they're expensive and you can build a lot of cheap lineups. Wow, Kitayama 24%. I'm off Kitayama, which means he's gonna win this tournament, but I want to play Kitayama on long courses, sure, but difficult courses. He always seems to let down on the easy courses. Even if you look at the Shriners, the Shriners, where he finished maybe second. This was in the fall. Yes, no, T9. Okay, he might have been in the mix of that little final group or something. I don't exactly remember. But he had a really good fall swing. T6 at 3M. T25 Black Desert, T9 Shriners, and fifth at Zozo. The Shriners is weird because it's a similar field as far as the level of talent. However, maybe the first two rounds or the weekend, I think it was a weekend based on these scores. It looks like Saturday especially. There was a ton of wind that came through, and that actually ended up making it a lot tougher than it would typically be there. I know the scores don't exactly reflect that. We had the winner at 22 under, but yeah, I mean, I think even Kitayama being in the mix there is more indicative of it playing a little bit tougher than usual, even if you don't see that on the scores. I just remember the amount of wind that we saw during one of the rounds was absurd. Yeah, that's all I've got. I mean, my bets currently, like I've said, just so it's all out here in the open. Just open up Bet365 is where I do most of my betting. I do have some money in BetMGM from the Ludwig. I hedged with Ludwig on Sunday before the round started at plus 300, boosted to plus 400 because I did have Cantlay, I had Fleetwood, I had a couple guys at the top that made me confident enough to throw some money at Ludwig. So Highsmith first round leader 66 to 1. Bridgman, first round leader, 66 to 1. Luke List, first round leader, 90 to 1. Those are my three first round leaders right now. I don't like to get overexposed on first round leader. Those are guys that I just have a kind of a funny feeling about. And then the outrights so far are Ben Griffin, 33 to 1, Hostler, 33 to 1. You can get a better number on both of those guys. That was just in MGM because I had a no sweat in MGM and I had something else in MGM that made me want to bet it there. So those two at 33. I've got Charlie Hoffman at 80 to 1. I've got Thor Bjornsson at 65 to 1. That is a FOMO bet. I don't believe in Thor Bjornsson that much, but I've said his name enough. Chandler said his name enough. I can't not bet him for whatever reason. Also really solid strokes gained numbers on these types of courses. And then the other guy that I didn't mention, I wonder where he's. I'm gonna see if I can pull him back up in the model. Chandler Phillips at 100 to 1. So let me go back in here. Let's do. That's fine. I'll leave it at 100 rounds and see if I can find him. Chandler Phillips. So Chandler Phillips, to me, the reason I bet him is because I think he finished T24 here last year, and gained on approach. I don't see him in this model. Did he get pulled? 20. Let's go 24 rounds. Yeah, T24 here last year. Why am I not finding this guy right now? Okay, there he is. 78th when I back it down to 24 rounds. Let's see if I got an idea. I want to do the 8, the 24 and the 100 with just Phillips because I have not a ton of units on him, but I do like him quite a bit. Chandler Phillips. All right, let's do this. And let's go 100 rounds. Chandler Phillips. So I think he was 78th. Of course, this didn't do what I wanted it to. So 64th when you go to 100. So what does that mean he's been for the last 8? I guess I should start from the bottom. So we did see improvement when going from 24 to 100. Last 8 is 109. So a little bit of a downturn in his last 8 rounds. This is interesting though. Projected ownership, like I said, is never perfect, but I am seeing 5.84% projected ownership. That doesn't sound like a crazy number, but relative to the guys in that price range, it clearly, you got Rico Hoey, who's a bomber at less ownership, 3%. Patton Kizzire, he's 6,700. Let me see if I can find like Vincent Norman, bomber, former winner in 2023, won the Barbasol. Matt McCarty just won. These guys are all less owned than Chandler Phillips. So either 5.34% of us are suckers, or we have found something that is enough for us to like and pull the trigger on. But yeah, that's all I've got. Short and sweet. Well, maybe not that short, but hopefully sweet. Yeah, and like I said, hopefully Chandler will be back next week. I don't like doing these shows solo as much because it's harder for us to bounce ideas off of each other, and yeah, it's just I feel like it's a little bit better flowing. But if we win this week, we win this week. I think how many we've got? 2 outrights so far this season. We hit Harris English at the Farmers. Chandler hit Ludwig last week. So yeah, hopefully we can get a winner this week. It's not the greatest field in the world, but just, find the guys that you really like. If you have questions or whatever, feel free to message me. I can pull up models for you if you want, and we can do that. But yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, like the show, rate the show, all the things on the podcast side and all the things on the YouTube side. If you're new to sports betting, especially in North Carolina, make sure you hit the link in the description. Get access to all the deposit matches and bonus bets across various sports books available to you. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you next time.